extend to 4 o'clock because we want to finish as close as we can to 5 o'clock. It's our practice to try to hold our meetings to an hour, and for that reason we've asked Ray, our guest speaker, as we do other guest speakers, to hold his remarks to under 2 hours. He said he would talk 20 minutes if I asked, and I did. So we're not going to have much time for Q&A, maybe 5 or 10 minutes afterward, but a half hour has to be left for a business meeting at the end of the presentation. So, and incidentally, I've identified a lot of people who are not regular attenders at our meeting. You're all welcome to come. And as soon as D. Schaefer shows up, we'll probably have application forms for you to fill out. I expect her shortly, but in any event, we do solicit additional memberships, and what is it, $5 for a year. And you can't get memberships in a lot of places at that level, so we'd invite that afterwards. But we're going to start with my introduction from as background, and then Ray will speak and answer some questions that we prepared in advance, following which we'll have some Q&A opportunities, and our Vice President, Mr. Smith, will have a mic that he can take to others in the audience. They are, Waycross Community Media is going to videotape this occasion and record it. That's why we need to have voices heard. What the background for this is, a city that was incorporated first in 1961 was not a city actually until 1968. As a consequence, we didn't have a city manager. We had a village administrator until 68. His name was L. Tom, and he was actually trained as an engineer, but he accepted an invitation to serve as our village administrator as of 68. And that was essentially our acting city manager, although he had not been trained as a city manager. The first person we hired in that position who had been trained that way was Mike Kadlasek in 1973. He was followed by Wayne Barfels in 1978, a 5-year term, and in 78 Wayne Barfels, followed by Claire Kuhlman, who succeeded Wayne Barfels after he served 4 years. She was the first woman ever to hold such a position in the state of Ohio. She was an interim manager because she had to retire early, resign early, and leave. Jason, are we going to get this? Is this okay?
Some of us in the room have hearing aids, have a hard time hearing, so speak up.
Okay, I will be sure to try to do that. Claire Kuhlman started in 1982. She was the interim city manager, the first woman in that position in the state of Ohio ever. Then, because she was so close to her own retirement, she resigned, and in 1985, our next city manager was hired. That's Ray, who's been in that position since then. If you notice, the first acting city manager held that position for 5 years. The second person serving in that function stayed for 5 years. The next person stayed for 4. Claire stayed for 3, which is overall kind of the average tenure for a city manager in the U.S. historically. Ray so far supersedes that average that he's a wonder. But I'm going to now say what it was that persuaded the city council in 1985 to hire him. I have, for documentation of this, a clipping from the archives in the Historical Society files from the September issue of the Cincinnati Enquirer. One of the issues that month, saying Roy H. Hodges, age 34, assistant city manager of Bloomington, Illinois since 1979, will become city manager of Forest Park October 1, 1985. He'd already, as you see, been in a position of administration and responsibility in a fairly large city. It turns out that was a city of 45,000, and it was part of a twin city complex, which included Bloomington, of 70,000. So this was a fairly populous area and high responsibility that Ray had already when we found him. After looking at resumes of 120 finalists, this is in the newspaper article, we had 120 applicants to succeed Clark Human, who resigned to move to Florida. But Hodges said that his job in Bloomington, a city of 45,000 at the time, was to attract businesses to the central Illinois area, which includes adjoining Normal. So more than 70,000 people lived in the two cities. He was administrative assistant for human relations and human relations director in Bloomington for 4 years before becoming assistant city manager. That's a lot of experience that he already had. And before going to Bloomington, the clipping continues saying, Hodges worked for Sangamon State University, Springfield, Illinois, for the state of Illinois as a criminal justice counselor, and for Pierre, Illinois. He was born in Lexington, Mississippi, and was raised in Chicago. He holds undergraduate and graduate degrees from Bradley University and Sangamon State University. So not only were we lucky as heck to get him, but to keep him with unquestionable assets that would have served any other community very well had he been inclined to go elsewhere. But he didn't, and he added to his resume significantly while staying here, and I have, from my own records, determined that wasn't available in that clipping from the Inquirer of September of '85, of course, but since then, Ray has served as trustee of the Hamilton County Development Corporation. He served as president of the Ohio City Managers Association, and he was president of the board of directors of the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce Leadership Cincinnati Alumni Association. Topping it all off, in 2003, he received certification in the International City Managers Association. So there you have it. That's his background and the foreground to the questions I'm going to start by asking him, repeating those that he's been warned about. So there's hopefully no surprise here. So the first question, what led you to apply for the city manager job with Forest Park in 1985?
Okay, well, I'll start by saying, at that time I was a young individual, and I was very excited about local government. I was fully committed to local government, and I'd actually looked at other places around the country, because at that point in time I was ready to go any place in the country to do what I wanted to do. So interestingly enough, I looked at places like Hastings, Nebraska, and all the way out to Sunnyvale, California. So I had some great opportunities at that time, because I was in a unique situation. I was coming from a community that was highly developed and very active. I was in a fairly unique role, so I thought I had some great opportunities. My wife wasn't all that excited about Hastings, Nebraska, although I often indicate they gave us the best reception that I had ever experienced. I had gone on a few interviews, so that was very unique. When I came here to Forest Park, I liked Forest Park, although I have to admit, Forest Park was rather modest in the little reception that we had. First, I didn't really know Ohio, and I certainly didn't know Cincinnati, and wasn't really that interested in it. There was nothing that kind of excited me about it. But long story short, when I got here, I was very impressed with this region, because I came here, in that close to fall period of time. Loved the scenery, the leaves were changing at that point in time. I just thought it was a beautiful place, beautiful place. When I got here in Forest Park, I found Forest Park to be very unique in the sense that there was something strange about Forest Park.
What?
There was subdivisions in. You could see the utilities, you know, when you're going by as a manager, you see fire hydrants, but you don't see any building. You see streets in, but you don't see any activity. There was something strange about Forest Park. So it's a beautiful community. I had to kind of figure out what was going on here, but I saw a great deal of potential. So I think it was what I consider the beauty of this area, quite frankly, and the potential that I saw in Forest Park at that point in time that kind of worked together to make me think that, okay, this will be here. And I'm going to say one other thing, and it's not because Brandon's here, but I'm going to get it out of the way. I was rather impressed with the people I talked to. Brandon was one of the people that I had a chance to talk to. And, you know, the sense of sincerity, the sense of community, again, I was impressed. I thought it could work for me. Why? Because I only needed about 3 years here in Forest Park. Then I'm out. So, so I thought it was a good opportunity.
My, oh my, that was a short horizon that got expanded, multiplied by 10, but you've already answered our second question in passing here. I asked, why did you accept the offer that was made? Your answer was it was a good aesthetic experience, neighborhood, and opportunities were here.
Yeah, just in terms of, you know, having a young family, believing that I could be in this community and be happy and comfortable, and again, just seeing a great deal of potential in Forest Park.
Third question, what was your first impression of Forest Park after you arrived to start work?
After I got here, I wasn't, you know, you always have second thought. Is this the right place to be? Because it was just, we were, of course, not in this building. We were, you know, basically next door. And things just looked a little limited in Forest Park in terms of the environment, in terms of what we were doing. Again, still seeing a lot of potential, but there just wasn't, you know, a whole lot I could say positively about Forest Park. The little office area I had, you know, I'm coming from a larger operation, and I got a pretty decent office and everything. And here, you know, I got the wall panels, and you know, so you know, it was just like any other situation. You start to have second thoughts about whether or not this is the right place. But I have to add, immediately as I was coming into contact with people, I was impressed with people. And you'll probably hear me say this repeatedly throughout my career here. I think the key thing for me being here in Forest Park really has been the people. I have met some of the most wonderful people while here in Forest Park. Now, I've met a few of the worst people in my professional career here in Forest Park. But absent that, I said no. Consistently, repeatedly, it's been the people. And I think the people have made just such a huge difference in, you know, my basically loving Forest Park.
You're on a roll. You're answering every second question ahead of time here. Because the next one is, what made you stay all these years?
Right, right.
And I'm very happy to observe, you know, just in passing, that although we weren't in this building, which was built after Ray came here, we were in quarters that you resisted describing as tacky, which would have been accurate, I think. You don't have to acknowledge that, but I thought we had a lot to go for when we built, authorized the construction of this new council chambers. But then, now, getting into a little more difficult area, I'm going to ask this question. What has been your biggest challenge?
Well, for me, I don't know if I've had, one biggest challenge. Every day is a challenge, every year is a challenge. We got different issues that we have to tackle. When I first came here, our biggest issues were street improvements and flooding issues. Those were the two biggest ongoing day-to-day type issues. Economic development always is a high priority. So, those were, the type of things. Everybody had a complaint about the streets. Everybody had a complaint about their flooding basement. Those were things that we had to address, but at the same time, we had to address the issue of there's not enough money to make this city operate. Because one of the sort of frightening things, one of the things that I found a little shocking when I got here is we had the Kemper Metal Business Center land. And I thought that was, man, such a great opportunity. But behind that, there was the debt. And there was nothing to pay off the debt. So we basically had the land and we were all ready to go, but we didn't really have money to support what we actually had. So again, when you start flipping the pages and you start looking at the details, so it was issues like that.
Yeah, I have to observe, we had only just purchased that property from HUD. It had come on the market because of default of the developer, Cantor Corporation, and so we put in a bid and it was accepted. And then I left office. In December of that year, we hired Ray in October of that year. And his words to me as I finished my term was, so you're going to leave me high and dry. Abandon me, I think was what he said.
Well, Brandon, for that comment, I'm going to add to it just a little bit. That was like the other little shocker. Because as I said, I was rather impressed with Brandon. Hey, he was mayor. We can make a pretty good team. And a couple months later, I'm realizing this guy's leaving. But in any case, it worked out.
It did, and one of the great days of city life was when all of the land in that development center were sold. Finally, we sold all of it off. I think it was closed out within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we had a great run, and there are a lot of factors that went into that. But for me, it was a pretty huge bullet to kind of dodge.
Right.
Try to work things out, because if you know economic development, you can have land, but it doesn't mean that you can develop it. It doesn't mean that anybody even wants to come and develop it. It's just not quite how it works, so you have to work at some things.
I'm tempted to say some words about the configuration of the thoroughfare through there, but I won't. This is something for later if time permits, but I want to get on to the next question. I don't want us to go too much longer, trying to keep this within 20 minutes.
Well, I assure you, I'm ready for 2 hours. But I haven't referred to notes yet, but I can if you need me to.
Well, we're down to the 6th question now.
Okay.
What do you think was your greatest achievement?
I don't consider myself as having any one great achievement. I think what I have been most successful of is my ability to manage people and resources. I think that's been really the key to my success here, is the fact that, one, I could reasonably attract good quality people. 2, I could reasonably keep good quality people. That's, from a management perspective. 3, I could interact with people that I consider pretty much on an even level. That is, they weren't my employee. Maybe they were a resident. Maybe they were a council member. But we could relate on the same level. And to that extent, there are so many people that helped me along the way. They helped me not because they were an employee, they helped me not because they were, you know, responsible for my success or anything like that, but they helped me because they were just good people that helped me along the way. And I won't start naming everybody because, believe me, I got a whole list, but because I know they're not here, you know, I think in terms of people like Roy Holmes, I think and Roy, when I first met him, he was a shocker because he talked so much. He had me out maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning after a council meeting, still talking. Come on, Roy, something's wrong here. But in any case, Roy was a great individual. He recently passed, but he was also a good personal friend of mine. People like Roger Ingstrom, great individual. Roger was at a completely different level. His commitment to social equality and well-being of people was so high. It really impressed and amazed me to the extent that, Roger, you can't be that liberal. Come on now. But he was a great individual. And I could go on and on and on to talk about people along the way. But, you know, I just named them because, again, if I start naming everybody else, that's 2 hours of communication.
Okay. Well, thank you for that source of memories, too, for all those of us who knew them all. Well, what's your favorite memory?
Again, I don't have a favorite memory. I can't go back to say, you know, let's just say when the Forest Fair Mall opened. You know, that was a big, grand, international type of thing. You know, people are calling me from New York and all that kind of stuff. But I can't say that there's any one thing that you know, is a great memory. I've had great memories along the way. That's why even today, I'm still excited about Forest Park. It's not going to work out that way because I finished December 31 of 2017. But I'm as excited to do another 5+ years. It's that exciting because we have had great moments, days, years, months along the way throughout the history. And so that goes back to, well, why are you still here in Forest Park? Forest Park is still exciting for me in terms of what we have accomplished. And just that, I think there are some exciting things in terms of what our potential is right ahead of us.
Yeah. Fantastic. A personal question to close out. This is our last question that was prepared. We're going to have a Q&A subsequently, but the final question was, what's next for you and Wenda?
Well, you know, that's interesting because a lot of people don't fully appreciate. For me, I'm just going to retire. That's it. So as much as, you know, somebody might subsequently ask me, well, what's your opinion about this? I'm not going to have an opinion. Okay? I mean, that's just the honest truth. And I reflect on the fact, you know, that I was in Bloomington, Illinois for 10.5 years. And, you know, you go back and my signature is on a whole lot of stuff in there. But when I left there, I left there. I left it behind. And that's pretty much how I have handled my career here. I really don't take my work home and talk about it. I know some people do, and that might work for them. I said, I don't really, you know, my wife doesn't necessarily get involved in politics or government or anything like that. I don't necessarily go home and say, you know, I had an awful day today, or, you know, let's talk about this, talk about that. Things stay on my mind constantly, but I switch gears and I do some other things. So if some people know me in the dance community, some people know me in the golf community, some people know me in the sports community. I have different circles that I very confidently fit into. One circle is this local government, local management circle. That's the circle I'm going to get out of. So I'll be here. I'm going to continue to be a resident because, as I say, I love Forest Park. I've seen, you know, every little part of the country, and I know there are other places I could be in, some beautiful places, but I said, no, I like Forest Park. I think Forest Park is a wonderful place. But I'm not going to be in government, so my next step is retirement.
And golfing communities are not a magnet for you then, somewhere?
Well, not as a community. I don't want to live in a golfing community. I will probably be, if you're a golfer, you're going to see me regularly. If you're not a golfer, you're going to wonder where I'm at.
Okay. Well, listen, we're at that place now where we're able to entertain some questions, 2 or 3. Anyone who wishes to will have to speak into the mic for recording. Irvin will make sure you're not forgotten.
Yes, and please stand up so you can be on camera. Yes,
Mr. Hodges, you have many achievements among national and international city managers. How did you go from being Forest Park newcomer to where you are now within the city management hierarchy?
Well, if I understand that question, it's really just more of a commitment to the profession. From the very beginning, I had a commitment to the profession of city management. When I started off as a history major, thinking I was going to go into law. There was a professor by the name of Rickenbach who introduced me to local government, because I didn't know local government. I was raised in Chicago. I was familiar with the fact that you could have a pothole that sits there in this particular neighborhood, which happens to be the black community, and it could be there for the next 10 years. And that's not an exaggeration. And I believe local government could be better. So when I committed myself to local government, I fully committed myself to local government. So I was glad to be involved in the associations, in the committees, doing the work, just knowing more. So it's really just putting in time and effort to a profession that I love.
Okay. Another question.
I'd like to make a positive statement. Hi. One of the things about Ray that I remember all through these years is your ability, and you worked at getting grants to help the city of Forest Park, and that is much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I think that's real important, and it gives me an opportunity to emphasize one of the points that I offered earlier. I think my greatest ability has been in the area of managing people and resources. And to that extent, I said, everything that we've accomplished has been accomplished because somebody else has actually done a lot of the work. There's been a staff member that worked on that grant. There's been a citizens that's inputted. It's been because of the people. But what I've been able to do is kind of coordinate the thing together. And as I said earlier, I'm not going to have much of an opinion of Forest Park because I think I've had an opinion on everything all the way up to this point.
Right. Right.
So a lot of the grants we've been able to shape because, as much as, again, I'm not talking about this around the dinner table, I might think of something at 6, 8 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, that's an idea we haven't tried. That's an angle we haven't, and then somebody else is probably running with it. But yeah, we've been very fortunate, and that has been one of the key reasons Forest Park has been as successful as it has been. We have received grants, but it goes back to one of the other questions. I've also served on most of the committees that have either developed the grants or developed the standards. So I know the details of the standards. Now, you can't vote on your own project, that's never permissible, but if you know what the standards are, the system works. You just got to understand what works and what doesn't work and what has the greatest potential of success. Sometimes it's going along, sometimes it's going in with another community. Sometimes it's focused on this issue, sometimes it's focused on other. But I appreciate your comment that in recognition of the fact that, yes, we've done exceedingly well in the grant area.
Very good. you. Any further questions? Going once. Going twice.
Give me your name, please.
I am Pearl Blackwell Lewis, and I don't know if you know Mr. Hodges can dance.
Brandon,
Yeah.
that's the last little detail I'll offer on how a city manager can be successful. Sometimes you've got to dance.
Yeah. It's not exactly tap dancing we're talking about either. His toes twinkle, but in a line. And ballroom? I didn't know that part. Oh.
Right. So, well, see, you got to be part of the dancing circle. So you are invited to the next dance opportunity.
All right, well, if that's the end of the questions and comments, comments are welcome also.
How do you disconnect from something you're so committed to?
Well, for me, it's not that difficult because, you know, as much as I will disconnect, it's not going to be from a lack of interest. I will maintain that interest. But as a professional, I believe, you know, you can only have one city manager in a city. A lot of city managers leave, and they leave for good reasons. In this situation, I say, we have a great situation where Ty Smith is the incoming city manager. He's an outstanding individual. I have all the confidence in the world with him. I think he can take Forest Park to a higher level. And to that extent, said, Ty doesn't need my help. The city doesn't need my help. They're in good hands. So when you leave something with the sense of confidence that you're leaving it with, it's not a problem. As I say, people were surprised when I left in Bloomington, but it was for the same basic reason. Everything was going great. Everything was fine. I could have been there, you know, for many, many more years. But why? I have another opportunity, and for now, for me, the opportunity is the things that I mentioned in terms of retirement. Okay, Brandon, I appreciate the opportunity
Well, thanks, Ray.
to be here. I appreciate folks even coming early enough to hear what you know, this is the type of situation I might have a couple employees if I, you know, convince them to be here. But as most of you know, I try to be as personable as possible. So it's not as though I, you know, am talking to people that are not even familiar with me or familiar with the city. And throughout my time here in Forest Park, I said, no, I'll just be a regular citizen here and input along that way. So we'll still be connected in that sense. I just won't have an opinion on the operation of the government. But I will have a vote.
One other question or comment?
Having our family here, raising our family who are now on their way. Thank you so much for your dedication. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You appreciate that.
We're going to have to now take a minute or two for a break and then go into our business meeting. If I'm not cutting anyone off prematurely, this will be the last call for any comments or questions, but then we'll go for a 2-minute recess and then start our business meeting. And Ray, we all thank you ever so much for what you've done.